Have you ever felt like you just don't know what the hell is going on in your business? You're unclear of what the problem is, what the constraint is, where you should be placing your attention. I used to struggle with that all the time. And then about 10 years ago, when I got started in the online advertising space around 2018, 2019, I created a dashboard system that allowed to give me perfect clarity in terms of exactly what's happening in my business. It allowed me to manage multiple different team members. And at this point now, we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars per month profitably across dozens of different ad accounts, dozens of different industries. And this same process has continued to work for me over and over and over again. And every client that I've ever worked with has said, I love your data. I love your reporting. I feel so clear and certain in terms of where my performance is with you guys. I see so many business owners that are doing multiple 7 figures a year, sometimes even multiple 8 figures a year, and they truthfully don't know their numbers, or they're shocked at the end of the month when they check out their P&L to see they're wildly more or less profitable than they thought they were. And by the end of this video, you're gonna have a step-by-step system and template that I've used for the years to give me perfect clarity, to know exactly the numbers that I need to hit, and if I'm not hitting those numbers, the exact plan that I need to do to get them back within KPI. And for those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Sam Sauter. I've been the performance marketer behind some of the biggest personal brands, coaches, and consultants in the entire world. I've worked in dozens of different industries, from software companies that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars to billion-dollar fund managers that hired us to do investor lead generation. We've done it all at this point in our career, and it's the same tracking process that you need to have so you have perfect clarity in terms of what's happening in your business. And if you are interested in working with myself or my team to manage your paid advertising or consult you to do this internally for your existing team, schedule a consultation below. Click the link below in the description of this video and we'll get you taken care of. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video and go into it. Now, the first thing that most business owners will say to me is, Sam, why are you doing this on Google Sheets? Shouldn't you use a third-party tool that aggregates all the data so you don't have to dynamically update that? Now, what's very interesting is I want to give credit to Ryan Deiss on this, but what he says is that he actually prefers for his multi-8-figure-a-year holding company to use something like Google Sheets, because the very act of doing the manual data entry trains your team to have a deep level of awareness and understanding around their core KPIs, and they develop an awareness in terms of how they're doing relative to their performance. As you can see here on this Google Sheet here, we have specific KPIs that map to specific business processes within our business, and then we typically outsource and delegate that clear KPI, let's say cost per lead, to a specific team member, and then we don't delegate and micromanage people. We give them full autonomy. We don't care how they hit the target, but we just give them full autonomy in order to achieve that target KPI within their business. KPIs that we're typically going to track is cost per lead, cost per live consultation, close rate, and then on the customer success side, we're typically tracking NPS scores, CSAT scores, activation points, the percentage of customers that are ascending. We're tracking every single key metric through those crucial stages within our business. We're delegating that to one specific person. We include on the Google Sheet who owns that specific metric, and then we're typically marking it as red if it's out of KPI, if it's yellow if it's right around average, and it's green if it's overperforming or it's doing far better than our projections. Now, when we started with this business in January, it's very unfortunate. The business owner had invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in paid advertising spend to start this business, and their prior media buyer had virtually burned all that money, and we were left with about $10,000 in the bank account to start our paid advertising process. Now, for this particular client, we spent $9,000. We generated $45,000 in sales, and then we slowly scaled the business. Now we're pulling back here in Q4. You can see here we've been incredibly profitable here in December, but what you can see is that in the first 6 months, we scaled them to just shy of $196,000 in cash collected on that 6-month mark, starting with only that initial $10,000 investment. Now, although I'm very happy with the outcome and where this business is and how we've performed, I'm most proud of the process and the input and the system that we have in place that allowed us to get there. Now, as you can see, the metrics that we're tracking month over month is ad spend, is total monthly advertising spend, our average CPMs, which means the cost that these advertising platforms are charging us to get in front of our target customers. As you can see, I want to know, is my performance suffering because I'm being charged more, or is my conversion rate on those placements going down? This column here tracks the percentage month over month ad spend increase. We track total cash collected, we track refund percentage. That's another key KPI that our customer success team, they're in charge of that metric. We track organic revenue, we track high ticket revenue, we track high ticket cash collected. So we might sell a $10,000 contract, but we collect 80% of that, or $8,000 up front. I want to track the average upfront cash collected as well as the close rate. We track low ticket sales. We sell the key economics in our business is from selling our high ticket product or service that's priced right around $5,000, but all the disqualified or unqualified leads are being sent to a low ticket funnel where we can still recoup a little bit of money here. And as you can see, we're typically getting about 10 to 20 cents back same day just from that low ticket funnel from leads that we otherwise would have completely gotten rid of and discarded. And the way we do that is by sending them through a simple application field that asks them their annual income and the other metrics that we know are correlated with our most successful customers. If they don't meet that criteria or the bare minimum of those requirements, they're sent to this low ticket funnel. We can recoup some advertising dollars, or we just send them to our webinar where we can pitch to them at a discounted price. The key is we don't want to fill up our sales team's calendar with these unqualified applications and force them to set aside an hour of their day towards somebody that is not qualified. The other thing that we track is our lead nurture campaign. We spend about 90% of our budget on the top of funnel funnel campaigns that are geared towards generating leads and qualified inquiries. After somebody books a call with us, our clients on average, we've set up a system to where they are being retargeted and served 25 pieces of content. Shout out to Jeremy Haynes for pioneering this strategy, where we're serving them 25 pieces of unique content prior to getting on the phone with our sales team. So as you can see here, we track the total amount of our advertising budget as a whole that is spent on lead gen versus lead nurture. If you're confused on the difference, we have plenty of other videos on this channel that clearly explain that. So what you can see here, starting in July, we allocated about 10% of the budget. We got as high as about 11% of the total advertising budget, and we're testing to see if that meaningfully improves the return on paid advertising performance. Now, Q3 and Q4 is historically a more difficult time to advertise than Q1 and Q2, so we're not 100% certain as to whether or not the drop in performance was correlated to just the seasonality inherent in our business, or if these lead nurture campaigns were just overall just not accretive and not worth it for our particular business model. The other thing we track is webinar sales. So one thing that we're doing to typically add a tremendous amount of profit to the particular business that we're working with is you can take all the leads that spoke with a sales representative, didn't buy, email them at the end of the month and tell them to attend a live Q&A webinar, and we re-pitch all of them, put them through a very intense, detailed, valuable presentation that's sometimes 2-3 hours long, and then at the end of that presentation, we give them the opportunity to work with us at a steep discounted rate than what they originally saw when they spoke to a sales representative. This right here adds an additional about 10 to 20% in top line revenue to our business, and it's a huge profit driver because it's all coming from email traffic, which is completely free. We just now at the end of Q4 also started tracking our back end and our ascensions. We generated about $1 million of sales. We wanted to make sure that the front end acquisition engine was dialed in and working really well. And now we're placing all of our attention and effort and energy off of creating a system to where we can get these people staying and buying for years and years on end. So you can see here, right in December, we held an in-person live workshop where we ascended and closed about 40% of the room that attended on a $5,500 product, to where they were put on an annual memberly subscription. We put on an incredible event that lasted about 13 hours for 2 straight days for the customer. And that took our return on advertising spend from what was on average around a 2x to about a 6x at this particular month of December, the time that we're filming this. We track the total amount of accounts receivables, the money that is owed to us from prospective customers that are paying that off in their payment plans. We track the total amount of cash that is being collected from new customers versus old customers. This is very, very important because oftentimes you will start to spend money aggressively towards a paid advertising campaign where performance is slipping. In actuality, all the cash that is coming in is attributed to actions and campaigns that you were running 30, 60, 90 days ago, not what you're doing right now. So you need to be very, very clear on what is my return on paid advertising spend for just new customers, excluding all the installments in the existing customer base. And we're also excluding organic traffic here as well. Now, this is where we're starting to track the little bit more granular marketing metrics here. You can see we're testing the cost for a lead, we're testing the cost per qualified lead, that's CPQL, and we're also testing the earnings per qualified lead. On average, how much money do we make from this lead segment and how much are they costing us? We're also tracking the percent change month over month in terms of how much our cost per lead fluctuates month over month. For this particular client, we allow anybody who's making more than $50,000 per year, as indicated by their application, to book a call with our sales team. We were tracking the close rates among the segment of leads that labeled themselves as having an income of between $50,000 and $100,000 per year. We track the close rate for that segment of leads, and then we also track the close rate for leads that are making more than $100,000 per year in income. Originally, we were sending them to the low ticket, that 50 to 100K segment. We tested sending them to the closer team for about 3 months, and then after that 90-day mark, we basically concluded that the sales team was allocating about 50% of their effort towards this lead segment. It was only generating an additional 10 to 20% in revenue for the business. And when you're dealing with sales reps, they really only have true bandwidth for about 3 to 4 live consultations per day. So I didn't feel like that was a good trade, and I'm just now sending them back to the low ticket, which is why you're seeing a big lift in terms of the amount of cash we're collecting from that there. We're tracking the total amount of live calls taken. We're tracking the cost per a live call. We're tracking the show up rate with cancellations. We're tracking the cost to acquire a customer, which you can see has been really consistent since we've been working on this account up until about December, where it shot up to $2,500. But ever since that point, it's been right around between $1,500 and $2,000. Very consistent. We're on average collecting approximately about double that, about $2,800 up front. And those customers are worth about $4,000 to us lifetime. So then a very, very important metric that you want to be tracking, another thing that we track, is the average upfront cash collected per live call. This is actually more important than your close rate, because you'll have some reps that are closing at a high rate, but their cash collected per live call is much lower. And that's very important from a cash flow perspective, from a profitability standpoint for your business. We're tracking the percentage change month over month in terms of the cost per qualified lead, the average daily spend price increase here. That's very interesting because you can see, okay, if I increase my advertising spend by 30%, my cost per qualified lead raised 30%, then what you just did for the business is basically all that budget increase that you just allocated for that effective month is effectively just money that otherwise would have instead, if you stayed at your existing scale, dropped to bottom line profit. So it's very, very important you're changing how you scale spend and how that affects the other performance metrics downstream in the funnel. If you're not tracking this, sometimes you're scaling and you're just spinning the wheels. You're spending more money, you're producing the same amount of qualified leads, and all that money would have otherwise been profit that drops straight to bottom line revenue. Now this is all tracked daily, I'm going to show you the monthly tabs, okay, where we track all these metrics daily. It's very important when you're spending, in this instance here, about $3,000-$4,000 per day in paid advertising spend just across this one account. You need to be checking your numbers almost daily. If we're spending a couple $100 a day, we'll typically check the client's data every single week because there's just not that much happening. Now, this gives us the 30,000 foot overview, and you can tell the story of the entire year of the business and the year of working with this client in a very short period of time. But if we want to be a good performance marketer, I can't spend $3,000-$4,000 per day and be asleep at the wheel and only track this by the end of the month and be, oh shoot, you need to know much sooner than that. And if you're spending tens of thousands of dollars per day, we're not even tracking daily, we're tracking hourly. Now that you've kind of seen the 40,000 foot overview in terms of what this looks like for the particular business, let's break it down further and see what it looks like from a month-over-month perspective. What you can see is, take November for instance here. Every single day we're tracking lead generation spend, we're tracking our lead nurture strategy here. Shout out to Jeremy Haynes for pioneering that strategy that allows us to nurture the leads and allow them to consume more content prior to getting on a sales call with you. So we're tracking top of funnel, we're tracking middle of funnel, this nurture campaign, the cost per click, the leads, the landing page conversion rate. This allows me to see if I'm running, see all these notes that I have here, allow me, if I'm running a particular split test, I can very quickly go to this day and say, oh my gosh, the landing page conversion rate shot up from 15% to 29%. Okay, and typically you don't want to look at it over a 1 day period of time. Performance will tend to average out over about a 4-day period in time. When I'm making a very specific split test, I'm looking how the data changes over that trailing 4-day period. And I can very quickly see what is the average here over this 4-day period after this split test versus before. So if I just highlight these 4 cells here, the Google Sheet here will just calculate an average right below there. Now you can see here I'm tracking the amount of qualified bookings, qualified live calls, the cost per live call. This is a bit of a setter metric. My cost per qualified call is healthy and within my target KPI. If my cost per live call is a bit of an issue there, then I might look at my setting team's performance to see why aren't we getting those people to show up for their appointment. Now this is another important metric here, is we're tracking the offer rates. So after my sales team, they fill out end of day reports every single day. They fuel into a Slack channel where the VAs update this every single day, is we track not just the amount of calls they take, but the amount of offers that they're typically giving on a daily basis. That would mean that if somebody showed up for 9 calls, maybe they're only really making a true offer. Somebody's really only qualified for 7 out of those 9 calls. And if I see that the offer rate starts to suffer, you can see for this month here, lead quality is perfectly fine. This means that 75% of the people they spoke to, they made an offer for. That can give me a pulse to see if it's marketing's problem, if it's sales problem, or if it's a combination of both. And then I look at total amount of closed deals. That gives me close rate. That's a closer metric, obviously. I look at the manual cash collected, the manual revenue. And then I have automated revenue from that low ticket funnel. I separate that. We check the high-ros reports daily to see what percentage is coming from organic revenue. And we even now in December, we just launched this client's YouTube channel. So you can see there's a YouTube organic, and we have unique tracking links across all of those social media profiles to know where is their true revenue coming from. Now, this is more of a customer success metrics here. We're tracking refunds that are issued, installments that are being collected. And then now, very importantly, the next metric that we're now recently implemented a back-end ascension model, and we are tracking ascensions. We are tracking the percentage of people that are existing customers that have already completed their payment plans that are now buying something else. It is a very, very important metric. And you can see here for the month, we spent about 60 grand, generate about $124,000 in cash collected back, which is decent performance, not great performance. It's not going to be incredibly profitable when you take into account that there's 10, 15% of top line going to sales team commissions, but it's not bad either. We're just now starting with this client, and we're now really starting to get their back end dialed in. There's hundreds of customers that we have onboarded that are incredibly happy, that love their purchase and primed to buy something else. We just had to make them another offer. And that's why you saw our return on advertising spend shoot up to 8x in the month of December, is because we finally took all those customers that had been with us for the entire year, happy with what they bought. And once we made them that second offer at the end of Q4, they're more than happy to buy that and make a purchase. So if I just had to summarize everything, basically what you're trying to do is trying to take all of your most important metrics, manually input them into this Google Sheets every single day, and have those totals auto-calculating so that you can see the 30,000 foot overview to begin to tell the story of what this particular year of performance looked like for you guys. If I had to summarize this particular client, this particular account, I would say that performance started off really good in Q1 and Q2. After Andromeda hit in July of 2025, we were affected. We had to pull back advertising spend and budget. And then right around December, we strategically cut budget, knowing that's very difficult to advertise for our particular offer. We implemented our back end, which is why you can see that there's actually a very high return on paid advertising spend here for December. And that's something that we're definitely going to be leveraging and using to our best ability in 2026 as we're looking forward. So as a CEO managing tons of different accounts, this is kind of the structure that I'm typically using. I'm checking these tabs every single day. It'd be irresponsible for me to spend several $1,000s per day and only check once per month. month. So I'm in real time optimizing and checking these metrics every single day. But then on a quarterly basis, I want to be able to zoom out and actually just see where is the business trending. As you can see, when Andromeda rolled out, we had to come up with a strategy because our cost per qualified lead, the same ads that we had been running for an extended period of time, our costs had now increased by 30, 40, 50%, which really radically changed the economics of our overall business. So without further ado, that's pretty much all that I have to share with you. I think it's really important that you manually import that data. Take a page out of Ryan Deiss's book and make sure that your team is very aware of these metrics. Give somebody ownership over their particular KPI, whether it's show up rate, whether it's cost per lead, whether it's your CSAT scores, your NPS scores, or maybe your percentage of your customers that are upselling into your back-end service or product. Put it in the Google Sheet and force that person every single day to import that data so they have a lot of awareness over that. Meet with your team at a cadence that makes sense. Maybe it's once per week, maybe it's once per month. Maybe you're at the point where the business is more automated and you can kind of just check in with your team and your leadership team once a quarter. But if you follow that process, you should have an unbelievable level of clarity in terms of where you sit in terms of profitability, your break-even return on paid advertising spend. Actually, before I hop off, I want to show you one more thing, which is your true break-even ROAS calculator. This is something that I set up with all my particular clients. We target our average daily spend, which boils down into our monthly spend, and then we look at our range in return on advertising spend. See, there's some days where our ROAS is a 1.6, and there's other days where our ROAS is a 4.5. And so we take that entire range, and then we ask ourselves, if that were to continue for the entire month, knowing we're probably not going to sit at the very bottom for the entire month, where would we sit at the end of the month? And then from that cash that would be collected from that return on paid advertising spend, how much commissions would be owed, how much fixed fees do we have in the company, what is the payment processor taking, and then what would the overall profit and loss and margins for that particular business? Now, we're averaging right around a 2.5x for this particular account. Not tremendously profitable, but again, it's an account we're slowly building that back end where the future purchases are disproportionately more profitable than the first purchase. We have a strong front end engine now where it can become exceptionally more profitable if we can continue to have success with these customers staying and buying again in the future. Now, what you can see is as you start to scale, your break-even ROAS starts to get lower. In other words, because your fixed fee base is a fixed fee and is unchanging like the media, as you start to scale up, that fixed fee base becomes a smaller overall percentage of your total revenue, which means if you can see in this instance here, if you're spending $2,500 a day, your break-even ROAS is much, much lower than what you need to achieve if you're only spending $1,500 a day. And this is super helpful for me because for so many points in my career, I was focused on ROAS, but instead I was focused on this number here. What is the total amount of profit that is going to go into my bank account at the end of the month? It focuses me to obsess over the absolute amount of money that I need to be making instead of the return. So for instance, in this scenario here, if we achieve a 3.5x return on paid advertising spend, which is very consistent for us for all of Q1 and Q2, we would be able to achieve $230,000 of net profit just the end of that first month alone. And if we're spending $4,000 per day, if we achieve that same 3.4x return on paid advertising spend, we're generating approximately $300,000 in net profit for the end of that month. So I think this is very important to study this, look at this every single day, and any moment in time, if you ever ask me, I'm a guy who doesn't remember people's names. I don't remember a ton of details from conversations, but I remember every single number. I could tell you a client that we had, 7 years ago, how much we were spending, what the return on paid advertising spend was in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. I'm very analytical, and this is something that I'm checking every single day. I know exactly at that point, if I ever start to get very, very close to break-even profitability or the point where I may be even losing a little bit of money, that's where you can pull back your advertising spend. And what you're typically going to find is that performance stabilizes because it's much, much easier to advertise at a lower scale than it is at a higher scale. When you're starting to scale spend aggressively, you're now competing in colder and colder traffic, and the ad platforms are forced to find people that look less similar from your ideal prospect or customer in order to support the total amount of impressions that you want to serve. So whenever I'm kind of in this green territory here where I'm very profitable, that's typically where I'm spending a lot, knowing that my spread between my current ROAS and my break-even ROAS is going to compress. And then when I'm kind of in this yellow territory, that's kind of where I'm sustaining. I'm focused on conversion rate optimization. I'm trying to improve performance, improve all the conversion metrics of that stage of the funnel. And then I'm in the red, that's where I'm losing money. That's where I want to be immediately privy to that, know that immediately, and not wait a month before I start pulling back advertising spend, but know absolutely that day start pulling back advertising spend so that I can get back to within profitability and start hitting my target KPIs. So without further ado, that is pretty much everything that I have for you. That is my $300,000 per month in paid advertising spend dashboard that I use to manage dozens of different clients in different industries and have perfect clarity, not just in terms of myself for my own benefit, but also helps the business owner get a perfect, clear understanding in terms of if we're making the money, costing the money, or something in between. If you're interested in working together on how we can help you scale your paid advertising, click the link below, schedule a free consultation. If you're somebody who's new or kind of just starting out. A less established business will recommend a consulting option. It's going to be much lower cost and allow you to kind of get your feet wet and start working with us at a much more affordable rate. If you're a business owner that's doing more than $100,000 per month in revenue, or ideally more than $500,000 per month in revenue, we can talk to you about becoming a client for our Done For You agency, where we take over everything, handle your paid advertising efforts from A to Z without you needing to lift a finger. So anyway, I hope you found this video valuable. I'll see you in the next one. And just the last thing is I also made one more video here on how I run profitable call funnels in 2026. If you're interested in learning about that strategy there, click this video here. You can learn more about that specific strategy. I also made a video right here about my webinar funnel strategy. Feel free to click that and watch that video here. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video, and thanks so much for your time.